Welcome to the Nourish to Thrive podcast, faith-forward, science-backed strategies for women who want more energy, less weight, and real answers. I'm your host, Tanya Pennington-Miller, a functional nutritional therapy practitioner and functional blood chemistry specialist with a master's degree in applied clinical nutrition. If you're tired of feeling dismissed by your doctor, confused by your labs, and stuck in survival mode, you're in the right place. Here, we simplify the science. We get to the root, and we anchor it all in truth, because God made your body to heal and thrive, not just survive. It just needs the right kind of support and less noise. Hello, my friend. Welcome into the Nourish to Thrive podcast. I'm so glad you're back with me today. I want to start with something today that I think really drives the point of this episode home. Have you ever heard that if you go camping for 1 week, like real camping, okay, I'm talking no artificial light, no screens, like just you and the sun and the stars and the people that you are communing with, that your circadian rhythm essentially resets itself? Maybe you've heard this and you thought, that sounds nice, but I'm not exactly in a position to go live in the woods for a week. But I just want you to hear me out today, because there is actually real research behind this. There's a study out of the University of Colorado where they looked at what happened to people's sleep and circadian rhythms after just 1 week of camping with no artificial light exposure. So what they found was pretty striking, actually. Participants' melatonin production shifted earlier by almost 2 hours. So their sleep timing really started to align naturally with the sunrise and the sunset. And their bodies essentially recalibrated to the rhythm of their God-given design without any supplements, without any protocols, without really any effort at all. Like 1 week, that's all it took. So what is it about a week in nature that does something months of sleep hygiene advice, right? Trying to hack your sleep, often can't even do for us. And what does that tell us about what our bodies actually need? So that's what this episode is going to be about today. Your circadian rhythm, what it is, why it is so foundational to everything else we've been talking about in this series this month, and what you can realistically bring back from that campsite into your actual life. Now, when most people hear circadian rhythm, they think going to bed at the same time every night, maybe, avoid your phone before bed or take some melatonin if you're struggling. And while consistency in sleep timing is really important, that framing really barely scratches the surface of what your circadian rhythm actually is and what it controls. So your circadian rhythm is not just a sleep schedule. It is actually a 24-hour biological timing system that coordinates nearly every function in your body. We're talking hormone release, metabolism, digestion, immune function, cellular repair, body temperature, cortisol, insulin sensitivity, even gene expression. Then all of it is timed and synced to a master clock inside your brain that takes its most powerful cues from light. And that's really going to be one of our biggest takeaways today is light has so much control over our circadian rhythm. So when your circadian rhythm, which we can think of as a clock, when it's running on time, your body knows when to be alert and when to wind down. It knows when to release cortisol in the mornings, when to release melatonin in the evenings. It knows when to burn fuel, when to repair tissue, like everything flows on a clock. But when that clock is off, and for most women living in modern life, it is at least somewhat off. The downstream effect touches everything. So it's going to affect our sleep quality, our hormone balance, our metabolism, our mood, our energy, our weight. All of it. So I want to talk about how your body clock, your circadian rhythm actually works. Deep inside your brain, in a region of the hypothalamus called the supraschematic nucleus. And we are going to get a little bit deep here, but I want you to just stick with me. You have a master clock inside there. It's a tiny cluster of neurons, and it's coordinating the timing of virtually every system in your body. And the most powerful signal it receives, the signal that sets and resets it every single day, is light. And specifically, it's the wavelength of the light that matters. So in the morning, natural sunlight contains really high amounts of blue and green wavelengths. And those wavelengths hit specialized cells in your retina, which are going to send a direct signal to your supraschematic nucleus that says, hey, it's daytime, wake up, start the cortisol, stop the melatonin, get ready to move, right? Like, let's get ready for our day. And then in the evening time, as the sun is setting, those blue wavelengths, they drop out of the natural light and it shifts toward red and orange tones. I mean, we've all seen a sunset, right? The light is different. And that shift signals your brain that the day is ending. Cortisol starts to come down. Melatonin starts to rise. Your body begins preparing for sleep and for repair. This is the rhythm that your body was designed to live inside. Morning light triggers the morning cascade. Evening darkness triggers the evening cascade. And when both ends of that signal are clear and consistent, everything downstream can run on time. So let's talk about what modern life is doing to that signal. And here's where the camping study becomes really interesting, is that when those participants went home back to their normal lives, their circadian rhythms actually drifted back out of that alignment because the signals their bodies were receiving every day, now being back in normal life, were conflicting with the timing that their biology had come to expect after that week. Most of us wake up indoors, right? Often before sunrise or in low artificial light, which is going to give the brain a very weak and delayed morning signal. We spend the majority of our day inside under artificial lighting that doesn't have that same spectral quality as natural light outside does. And then in the evening, we expose ourselves to bright overhead lights, right? We're looking at screens, blue light heavy devices, and we're doing this right up until the moment we fall asleep, which is really telling the brain, hey, it's still daytime. And it's going to suppress that melatonin production for hours. The result is a circadian rhythm that is perpetually confused. And a confused circadian rhythm means cortisol is not going to arise efficiently in the morning. Melatonin isn't going to arrive on time in the evening. Our metabolism isn't going to shift the way that it should between active and repair modes. And we have a nervous system that never quite gets that clear signal to wind down. This is why the camping reset works so well, because for 1 week, the light environment finally matches our biology and the body responds exactly the way it was designed to. And I just really want to pause on that for a second because I find it genuinely fascinating that it took 1 week. 1 week. That's all it took for the body to start recalibrating. And I think about that and I am just in awe of how God designed us. When we give the body what it needs, when we stop overriding that design and we instead support it, it responds. And it responds so much faster than most of us would expect, or faster than I think we even deserve. So let's shift. And I want to talk about why this is especially important for you, for women over 35. Because as estrogen and progesterone shift in perimenopause and beyond, our circadian rhythm becomes much more sensitive and more vulnerable to disruption. And research shows that women in midlife experience a natural tendency toward what is called circadian phase advance, meaning the internal clock wants to shift earlier. So you may find yourself getting sleepier earlier in the evening, but also waking up earlier in the morning, sometimes much earlier than you would even like to. And at the same time, the amplitude of the circadian rhythm, so meaning how strong and how clear the peaks and the valleys are, can decrease with age and hormonal change. So this means the difference between your most alert state and your most restful state becomes flatter, like they're less defined. And this contributes to that wired but tired feeling that so many women describe. The system that should be driving clear energy in the morning and clear wind down at night is just less sharp than it used to be. And because cortisol is so tightly tied to our circadian timing, a disrupted body clock means disrupted cortisol rhythm, which loops directly back into the sleep architecture disruptions that we talked about in last week's episode. Your HRV, your deep sleep, your REM sleep is downstream from how well your circadian clock is running. So I want to come back to that camping study for just a moment because I think there's something deeper there than just the light exposure piece. Granted, light exposure is one of the most important pieces. But when people go camping, yes, they stop being exposed to artificial light, but they also move their bodies during daylight hours instead of sitting inside, right? They eat meals that naturally align with sunrise and sunset. They are in nature, which has its own nervous system regulating effect. The stress load drops, the urgency drops, the body gets to experience a pace that actually matches its design. So the circadian reset from camping isn't just about light, it's about the whole environment finally matching the biology. And that tells us that the goal isn't just to manage light exposure. The goal is to create a life where your daily rhythm, morning, afternoon, evening, nighttime, gives your body the signals it needs to run on time. And we do this through movement, through meal timing, and putting work down outside of work hours. Now, look, I know you can't just jump and move into the woods, but it sounds really, really nice. But you can bring more of the campsite into your daily life than you might think. And the return on these investments is really significant because you're working with one of the most foundational systems in your body. Morning light is the single most important circadian input that you have access to. So getting outside within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, even if it's a cloudy day, and getting that natural light into your eyes without sunglasses for somewhere between 5 and 20 minutes is going to help to set your circadian rhythm. It's going to suppress lingering melatonin that might be hanging around, and it's going to help to anchor your clock for the entire day. Now, if it's dark when you wake up, especially in the winter months, a quality light therapy lamp or light therapy glasses can give you a reasonable substitute. So I personally have to use these because whether it's winter or summer or fall or spring, I'm up before the sun is up. So I personally love using the Luminet 3 light therapy glasses for this. I've talked about them before on this podcast. I'll put my link again in the show notes for you so that you can check them out if you'd like to. You can wear them and do what you need to do in the morning time because you can still see with that light shining into your eyes. So in this link, we'll be connected to a 15% discount. But this one habit alone can shift how you feel by mid-morning. Okay. Next, eating within 1 to 2 hours of waking is a circadian signal as well, because food timing acts as a secondary clock input. So when your first meal comes in early and consistently, it reinforces the message that daytime has begun and your metabolism should be active. While the opposite, skipping breakfast or eating your first meal in the late morning or early afternoon, sends a conflicting signal that really blunts the daytime metabolic rhythm. Now, also, let's talk about dinner because finishing dinner before the sun goes down, or at least close to it, is another really important piece because a late or a heavy meal eaten under artificial lights tells your body that daytime is still happening, even while your hormones are trying to wind down for the evening. And part of this comes down to insulin sensitivity, which naturally declines as the day goes on. So the same plate of food eaten at 5 p.m. gets processed differently than it does at 9 p.m. So this means that dinner times may shift with the calendar season that we're in, right? So in the summer, when the sun isn't setting until closer to 8 or 9 or even 10 o'clock where I live, you have more room on the clock to finish dinner. Whereas in the winter, when it's dark by 5 or 6, we're ideally going to want to finish dinner before then. So a simple target is finishing dinner about 2 to 3 hours before it actually gets, completely dark, depending on where you live, depending on the season that you're in. So just remember that your body isn't reading a clock, it really is reading the light. Okay, next tip is in the evenings, dimming your lights after roughly 8 p.m. or when the sun is naturally going down outside. And also reducing screen exposure in that hour or two before bed. And this is one of the most effective ways to let melatonin rise on time. You do not have to eliminate screens entirely, but we can do things like reducing that overhead bright lighting that I think most homes have on in the evenings. It's genuinely one of the biggest circadian disruptors that we have. So if you can get lamps with warm bulbs, I mean, some people will even use red light bulbs. You can use candles, dimmer switches, like these can really help to set the tone for the evening. And if you're someone who genuinely cannot step away from screens in the evening, maybe it's just something you really enjoy doing with your partner, catching a show or two before bedtime after the kids are asleep. Blue light blocking glasses are a really practical tool. And I'm not talking regular clear lensed blue light glasses. You're going to want to get the orange or the red lens that also block blue light because they're going to help to filter out the wavelengths that suppress melatonin so that your brain can get that wind down signal even if the screen is still on. So I'll put another link to some of my favorites in the show notes as well. It will also be connected to a discount. Maybe these are 10%. But it's nice because you can get a pair that if you don't wear glasses, you might get a certain pair. If you do wear glasses to watch TV, you can get another pair that actually goes over your glasses so that you can still see the television. And then consistency in your sleep and wake times. I mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, really is important. And I'm even talking weekends here. So your circadian clock is calibrated by repetition. So every time you stay up 2 hours later on a Saturday and you sleep in 2 hours later on a Sunday, you're essentially giving yourself mild jet lag. There's actually a technical term for it called social jet lag. And research connects it to increased cortisol, to disrupted metabolism, to poorer sleep quality. And we end up with an increased risk of metabolic dysfunction. So your body clock, unfortunately, does not understand weekends. Okay, so we really want to try to keep our wake up and our sleep times within 2 hours of when we normally wake up and go to sleep. Okay. And finally, moving your body during daylight hours rather than late at night is going to help to reinforce that daytime active signal as well. So even a 20-minute walk outside in the afternoon is actually going to help to support both your circadian rhythm and your cortisol wind down for that evening. So I want to close with something that I find genuinely beautiful about all of this. From the very beginning of creation, God established rhythm, evening and morning, work and rest, seasons and cycles, the sun to govern the day, the moon and the stars to govern the night. That pattern is not incidental. It is woven into the fabric of how life was designed to function. And your body carries that same pattern inside of it, literally. Like your cells have clocks. Your hormones follow cycles. Your brain responds to light and darkness the way it was made to. You were built for rhythm. And when you live inside that rhythm, even if it's imperfectly, your body is going to respond. I think about the camping study and I see something more than biology there. I see what happens when we stop overriding the design and we just let it do what it was made to do. The body knows. It has always known. Sometimes we just need to stop fighting it long enough to find out. Genesis 1 says that God saw the rhythm he created and called it good. I believe your body, when it is living inside that rhythm, reflects something of that goodness back in a way that is real and that you can feel. So let's protect that rhythm. We have one more episode left inside this series, and it might be my favorite one. Next week, we're going to talk about what your wearable is and isn't telling you, because the data is only as useful as your ability to read it, right? And there's a lot that these devices show you that gets misunderstood or misapplied. So you're not going to want to miss that one, especially if you are already wearing a wearable or if you're interested in wearing a wearable. And we're talking Oura Ring, Garmin Watch, Apple Watch, Fitbit, right? Any of those devices. And also, if you have any questions for our upcoming Q&A episode, this is going to be the first Q&A episode that we are going to have on this podcast. I want you to send your questions to me on Instagram at tanya.pennington.miller. You can be one of the first to get your questions answered. So I love hearing what's on your mind, and I will be answering the questions right here on the show. So thank you so much for spending time with me today, and I'll see you right back here next week, sister. That's it for today on the Nourish to Thrive podcast. If you found value here, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or send it to someone who's walking a similar path. Keep showing up, keep asking questions, and know that healing is possible, especially when you trust the one who designed your body to heal. Until next time, stay rooted in truth and nourished in grace.